We're here this afternoon interviewing David Wells. He's a candidate for 14th Circuit Court Judge in Muskegon County. Mr. Wells, thank you for being here today. Give us a little bit about your background information and what makes you qualified to run for 14th Circuit Court Judge.
Thank you. I've been an attorney in Muskegon County for 35 years, practicing law in nearly all areas. What a lot of people don't understand is that a circuit court judge is kind of the last stand of the general practitioners, and a circuit court judge has to have experience in numerous areas of the law. Circuit court is the major trial court where everything takes place other than probate and other than collections and misdemeanors. So in other words, in circuit court, a judge in circuit court handles not only criminal felony matters, but handles all the various civil types of cases, which includes contracts, personal injury, medical malpractice, legal malpractice, zoning, construction, real estate, insurance contracts, all different kinds of contracts, construction contracts, all governmental issues, employment discrimination, labor issues, basically all areas of the law that you can possibly think of. In my 35 years, I've been a litigator. Also, some people call that a trial lawyer. I've been a litigator on both sides of the fence, both as a plaintiff and as a defendant, both in the public sector for municipalities and against municipalities. And I had trials and practiced law in nearly all the different forums that exist in the state of Michigan. And I have handled litigation and have experience in nearly all those areas of law. Oh, a couple I forgot to mention include divorce, custody, child support, issues related to children that aren't handled in probate court. And so I have extensive experience in all those various areas of the law as a litigator. And then, in addition to that, I've been first a circuit court case evaluator for 29 years as a neutral. That's a situation where judges refer cases that are in litigation to an evaluation panel, and it's three lawyers, one who represents plaintiffs, one who represents defendants, and then one they call a neutral person. I've been a neutral case evaluator for 29 years, helping to resolve circuit court cases. I've also been a circuit court mediator for 11 years. And I'm on the panels or certified by various different circuits throughout the state of Michigan. And another method that circuit court judges use to resolve cases is to refer them to mediation. That's a person who gathers the parties together and works with them trying to get them to settle cases. Well, that takes experience as a litigator as well as experience in the areas of the law that the litigation takes place. And I've been doing that for 11 years. For 15 years, I've been an arbitrator with the American Arbitration Association. I've done labor arbitration, commercial arbitration, employment arbitration, in basically all those areas. And an arbitrator is essentially a private judge, and you are the judge of choice. In other words, you have two parties who don't want to have their case in a regular court, or they've already been to a regular court and they decide they want to go to arbitration, and I've handled cases like that too. And the arbitrator is the judge of choice, the person they choose to be the judge in the case. And I've been doing that for 15 years, and in some cases, some rather large litigation cases. One of the largest one I handled was a contract case in southeastern Michigan. They were disputing $25 million, and there was a decision in the millions of dollars by me, and I was a single arbitrator chosen by these very talented and experienced attorneys to be the one to make that decision. In addition to this, I think it's very important that a circuit court judge or any judge in the community have a real good feel for the community itself. You need to have a good idea of what the challenges are of the people who are before you, understand what their life challenges are, understand what community resources are out there and what pressures are out there in order to make good decisions and understand the consequences of your decisions. You need to understand the challenges that everyday people have. Throughout my entire adult life, I've been extremely involved in community activities as a volunteer on many numerous organizations. I've been very active in the community. I'm a fourth generation Muskegon person, so both me and my family we know Muskegon. We're from Muskegon. We're Muskegonites. And so I think that gives me a nice broad background into the challenges that people have and what's available out there to help them. So, in summary, I've been very much a generalist. I have experience in numerous areas of the law. I've been an attorney for 35 years. I have a lot of experience doing it. I have experience as a neutral, as a mediator, and as an arbitrator, as a case evaluator, and I've been very active in the community.
What's your experience as far as family law and criminal law is concerned?
I've been representing clients in family law ever since I got licensed in 1976. That some people specialize in certain areas, and I've never said, okay, I'm a specialist in family law, and that's what I'm going to primarily do is family law. I've never done that. But I've always had divorce cases and family law cases going, several of them at any one time throughout my 35 years of practice. Criminal law, in the early part of my practice, I did some criminal defense work, both misdemeanors and felony work. And then later, most of my criminal work has been in the area of prosecutions. I was a municipal attorney. I've been a municipal attorney for a number of years for various municipalities, and I've prosecuted people on behalf of those municipalities primarily for misdemeanors.
What distinguishes you from the other 5 candidates?
First, my experience. I have a lot more experience than all of them, 35 years worth. Second, my experience is much broader, I believe, than my competitors. And they're all fine people. They're fine people. They're fine attorneys. And they do excellent work in their areas. But I don't know any of them who has practiced and has experience on such a broad range of issues in areas that I have. I mean, I've tried cases in nearly all those areas that I mentioned, whether it's insurance or municipalities or personal injury, family law, all of those areas, labor. I have experience litigating all of them, malpractice cases. I don't think any of my opponents have ever been a mediator and haven't experienced that. I know none of my opponents have ever been an arbitrator, actually been in that judge's seat making decisions like I have. And a couple of them haven't had the experience of the business of the practice of law. I mean, there's challenges not only to being a lawyer, but being a lawyer and running a business. And as a judge, I mean, not only do you have to have a good knowledge of the people who come before you, but when in that class of people, I include the lawyers who come before you, and they all have their own challenges on a day-to-day basis to run a practice and to run a business. And I've had a lot of experience with that also.
The public defender system in Muskegon County, is it broken? Does it work good?
Compared to what? That's my first question. I mean, do the people with public defenders get the same defense as people with a lot of money? No. Do we have the same resources available to them that the prosecutor's office has? No. Do they get constitutionally protected, the rights protected? I would say we probably do a reasonably good job here in Muskegon County for the amount of money that's being spent. I mean, everybody knows that people with more money can afford to spend more money on their litigation. People with less money spend less. That's true whether it's in the criminal section or in the civil section. So is there room for improvement? Oh, absolutely. There's tremendous room for improvement. There's a lot of incentive on the part of the people who are in the public defender system, the attorneys, that they get a lump sum pay and they want to move cases if they can. But that doesn't mean that they aren't conscientious and work hard for their clients. I believe they do. Can it be better? Yes. Is it broken? I don't think it's broken.
What would be your idea as far as improving it to the degree it could be improved?
More resources. I mean, that's the easy answer. The way to improve it is to provide more public defenders, which requires more money, and have smaller caseloads by the public defenders, hire people to do investigations, have money available for discovery, things like that. The question in that whole arena, though, is, since it's all public money, it's all taxpayers' money, is to what extent do the taxpayers owe a defense to people to meet their needs to be properly defended, as opposed to a Rolls-Royce defense. That's more of a political issue than a legal issue.
Jail overcrowding, do we need a new jail, first of all? Is it really overcrowded, or is that a kind of like a police, judge, prosecutor engineered overcrowding?
My answer is I don't know. Because there's about 3 or 4 questions that you threw in that one question. The first question is the jail issue being manipulated by some people to promote the need for a new one as opposed to repairing the current one? I don't have enough first-hand knowledge in the administration of how it's currently being run to answer that question. I don't really know. I've heard people say, well, we're taking inmates from other places when we could be using our own inmates. And I really don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that the easiest way for the judicial system to deal with criminals is to put them in jail. So, if the beds are available, the judges and the system are going to fill them. It isn't like we have a shortage of crime in Muskegon County. And it's not just crime, there's other reasons to put people in jail. People violating court orders and things of that nature. So it's really more of a political issue than it is a judicial issue. How much money are the people of Muskegon County, how much money are they willing to spend to have jail beds? Because there's, as I indicated, there's no shortage of crime. However big it's made, the system will fill. So then the issue is, okay, if the system will fill whatever availability there is, what other alternatives are there to take care of the problem other than just put them in jail cells? As a circuit court judge, the issue with them is right now each one of the judges have a certain allocation of slots that they have, but a large number of the people in circuit court go to prison, not in the county jail. Now you have parole violators, you have people waiting for trial, you have people in contempt of court things, you have people waiting for various reasons in jail, and those all have to be taken into consideration. But a majority of the criminals who are sentenced in circuit court go to prison, not jail. So frankly, I think there's more variable as far as jail beds go with the district court judges than there are with the circuit court judges. But I'm not saying the circuit court judges don't use them. They do, because there's a lot of reasons why circuit court judges have people in jail too.
I'm going to classify felonies into 3 categories: violent felony with a victim, non-violent felony with a victim, and non-violent felony without a victim. That'd be like possession of marijuana, something where there's nobody else involved other than the person that actually committed the crime. The last category, do they belong in prison, or do they belong in jail, or should they even be incarcerated at all?
Well, the last category you mentioned, I don't know if there is such a thing. Because when you look through society, and we pass laws for a reason, when you look at society, is there truly a victimless crime? Arguably, you could say there may be, but then you could say peripherally in society that there's victims because of the system. The real question here isn't so much what the judges should be doing, because the circuit court judge doesn't have a whole lot of leeway. First of all, the circuit court judges don't pass the laws. They don't make things a crime or not a crime. It's not up to them, it's up to the legislature whether or not something's a crime. The circuit court judge's job is to apply the law. That law includes sentencing guidelines. And I'm a proponent of sentencing guidelines. I think it's good. It'd be nice if the judges had a little more discretion in what they do, but sentencing guidelines were started in the first place so that person A convicted of crime, say in Detroit, versus one in Escanaba versus one in Muskegon, that those 3 people, if they committed the same crime, will get within a range of the same penalty. Because before the sentencing guidelines, you had huge variances as to what the sentences were, depending on where in the state you were convicted and what judge you drew. So for a societal reason, I think sentencing guidelines are really good in that it makes sentencing more uniform across the state. The question that you raise is, well, are the sentencing guidelines reasonable? And that's really not the job of the judge. That's the job of the legislature that sets them up.
Correct, but a judge can either exceed the sentencing guidelines if he gives a reason, or he can go under them if he gives a reason. So let's say we have somebody that's caught with a shoebox full of marijuana, and it's for their own use, allegedly. Does that person really need to go to prison? Does that person really need to be incarcerated versus the person that, let's say for instance, they go do something really wild and crazy, like shoot up a theater at midnight?
When you say that a judge can go outside of the guidelines with reason, you are understating the situation, because though even those reasons for going under or over are prescribed by law, the sentencing guidelines tell you under what circumstances you're allowed to go over and what circumstances you're allowed to go under. And if you exceed those boundaries, you'll be reversed. Okay, so again, I don't see it as being within the realm of what a judge does as to what the sentencing guidelines are. That's more a legislative matter.
So essentially, the judges are handcuffed to a point as to what they can create for a sentence.
Absolutely,
based on the guidelines.
Absolutely handcuffed. I know of numerous instances where I've talked to our local judges where they didn't want to give the sentence that they did, either because they thought it was too high or they thought it was too low, but they had to, because they were required to follow the law. And I'm a great believer in following the law, whether it's the Constitution or whether it's the written law, the statutes. That's our job as a judge, is to follow the written law, not to make it.
How long have you wanted to be a judge?
Well, I've been a judge for 15 years. I've been a private judge. I've been an arbitrator for 15 years. So it predates that. There's different types of judges, and an arbitrator is a type of judge. So I've wanted to be a judge probably more than 15 years, at least 20. As far as being a probate or district or circuit court judge, I've had an interest in that probably for about a dozen years. But I'm also a true believer of when we have sitting judges and they're doing a reasonably good job, that I don't think attorneys should run against them just because they want the job instead of the other person. They make a commitment, they leave their practices, they gain experience as judges, and if they're doing a reasonably good job, I think you ought to keep them in office.
Okay. Now, you mentioned about being somewhat handcuffed on the decisions you can. What are your views on alternative methods of punishment, and how well can they be used?
I'm a proponent of that. First of all, I do believe that people need to be responsible for their actions. But I also believe that people need opportunities to succeed. And that's kind of a carrot and a stick thing. I'm a strong proponent of, and I think it's a tremendous success, the sobriety court that we have, and that's a perfect example, where without the sobriety court, the return rate to jail, recidivism it's called, is very high. The graduates of the sobriety court have a much lower recidivism rate, and they tend to stay out of the system. And that's a marrying or a marriage of penalty, medical treatment, supervision and monitoring, and a whole lot of dedication by an administration of a team of people trying to solve the problem other than just sticking them in jail and fining them. A couple fledgling specialty courts, these are called specialty courts, are the Veterans Court and the Mental Health Court. I'm a proponent of those. And I'd also be a strong proponent of a drug court in Muskegon County. Currently, we don't have any circuit court judges who are willing to tackle that. And it's a big problem. It's also a big task, because it takes a lot of resources and a lot of energy and a lot of patience and willingness to deal with it, to put it all together, as Judge Wieringo knows with the sobriety court. But I think that would be a good program in Muskegon, and hopefully we will keep some of these drug users, especially the low-level ones that you're talking about, even though it's a felony, the low-level people that some people call victimless, keep them out of the system, or prevent them, I won't say prevent them, help them not get back into the system and get worse, and so that there are victims, and there are victims of violence as well as other crimes. So I'm a big proponent of that, and then there's other things like house arrest and monitoring and other ways to address things like that. Those are already being used. Could they be used more? They probably could, but that takes resources also. And whether or not the county is willing to expend the money for that as opposed to jail beds, I guess we'll find out.
Okay. The sheriff has mentioned that roughly 65% of the people sitting in jail right now are awaiting trial. Is there anything you can see to help lower that amount? Because they've not yet been convicted of a crime.
Most of them have the opportunity to get out if they post bail. First of all, the bails are posted in district court, and they're continued once they get into circuit court. Some people, you don't want out on bail because they're violent. I mean, there's a reason why they're there. Other people you don't want out because they're a risk of fleeing and not showing up for trial. But you have to take every case separately. That's why I think it's important that a judge has a good understanding of the community and the challenges of the people in front of them to be able to set proper bail, to be able to weigh the risk to the community versus the rights of the people to prepare for their trial and be out before they've been convicted. So, it's really difficult for me to comment about what percentage could be out as opposed to in jail waiting, because everyone is really kind of fact specific as to how big of a risk are they to the community, how big of a risk are they to not showing up for trial, what resources do they have, and are they a risk to the community in any way. So I don't think there is an easy answer to that. You have to look at it case by case.
Okay. Although you wouldn't be specifically responsible for it, what is your opinion of the jail being run as a business for housing prisoners, either for the state or for the federal government?
It's my understanding that in some areas of the country they're successful, in other areas of the country they aren't. And I think it really somewhat depends on the amount of money that's available. The ones that are run on less money, I probably have people running it have more reason and motivation to cut corners where they shouldn't be cut. And I think it depends a lot on who's actually administering it and overseeing it to make sure that it's being done right. Can it be done? Of course it can be done. There aren't many things that the private sector can't do that the public sector currently does. There are some exceptions like national defense, but the private sector is capable of, and usually capable of, doing it for less money than the public sector does. But because of the profit motive in there, there's also some room for abuses. So I'm not opposed to it, but it would really require some significant supervision to make sure that it's being done properly. And there'd have to be significant savings for it. Then there's the whole issue, of course, in Michigan of, the authority of the sheriff versus the jail. And, basically the sheriff has control over all of that. And how it would affect that, and whether or not we need legislative change in Michigan to effectuate that. So I'm receptive to talking about the idea, but I can't say, I'm not advocating one way or the other for it.
Okay. And one last question: is there any other things you'd like to see to help cut the recidivism of prisoners?
I think the specialty courts is the best method that we have going right now to reduce recidivism. I mean, recidivism has always been a big issue in the criminal justice system, and they've tried a lot of different things. The problem is there's so many factors to it, so many faceted. It has to do with availability of jobs, it has to do with education, it has to do with personal values, it has to do with mental health, it has to do with physical health in addictions, it has to do with the certainty of punishment if you're caught, and the certainty of serving your terms if you're sentenced. There's so many factors involved in that it's not an easy issue. And just when it's kind of like whack-a-mole, you know, when you think you've got it taken care of over here, you know, this other aspect pops up, and people are in the system for another reason. So right now, I'm a true advocate for and a believer in the specialty courts, and I think that's the best vehicle we have going for us at the moment.
Okay.
Jail. Approximately a dozen years ago, it had around 250 bed capacity. And there was a lawsuit between the sheriff, the county board of commissioners, and there was quite a bit of acrimony around that. And as a result, the county went ahead and expanded the jail to approximately 400 beds. And since then, that's what they've had, that's what they've used. Is 400 the right number? Is it a pretty good number in your eyes, or should it be higher? Should it be lower? What's approximately how many beds should we have for a functioning jail to accomplish basically what you explained today should be accomplished by incarceration?
I can't answer that question. I'm not an expert on jails. I'm a lawyer, and I practice law, and I work in the courtroom and work with the laws and applying the laws. I can't tell you that based on the demographics of the population of the county of Muskegon that we should have X number of beds. I can't tell you based on our crime rate that we have X number of beds. All I can tell you is that however big it's built, the judges and the system will fill it. If it's small, then the whole system is forced to figure out other ways to solve the problem. I don't think there is a magic number as the number of beds, because you go into any community, it depends on the population, depends on the crime rate, depends on what kind of crimes you have, depends on your enforcement, depends on the criminal system in the state and what the sentences are, depends on the people waiting for trial and parole violators who are sitting there who automatically get beds. That's why they have whole groups of experts out there on demographics and building of jails. And I don't consider judges to be experts on the demographics and of jails. They know how to put people in them, but I don't think they're experts on telling you how many beds you should have. That's really that's more of a political issue too. You know, how many beds do the people in the community want to pay for? And as opposed to what the consequences are if they don't have them.
Anything else you wish to add that we didn't cover?
Well, I didn't come here with any preconceived notions of what you're going to ask me or what I wanted to cover. I believe we've covered my background, I think, which is one of the most important things as far as my experience and my involvement in the community and my broad experience that I have. And so I think we have fairly adequately covered. If I've answered your questions, I'll be glad to go over more if you have more for me.
No, I'm fine.
That's it.
Okay.
We thank you for taking the time out of your schedule today to come talk to us, and good luck in the primary.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.